Right. My name is David Weintrop. I'm faculty at University of Maryland, and I had the great pleasure of getting to co-author a chapter with our fearless leader, Shuchi, and that chapter is titled JavaScript, Python, Scratch, or Something Else, Navigating the Bustling World of Introductory Programming Languages. Do people see the title slide here? This looks good. All right, some thumbs up. Okay, so the problem that we were trying to tackle with this chapter is the recognition that when teachers set out to teach computer science, at some point they are going to be confronted with this consequential decision of deciding what programming language to use, what environment, what tools. And there was a time where this was maybe not a totally straightforward decision, but there was maybe one or two choices to choose from, and they kind of look the same, and it's just a matter of like where the semicolon and curly braces go. That decision now is made much more complicated because now it's not just picking a language, it's also picking a modality between graphical and text-based. It's trying to decide if you want to be physical, include physical robotics and tangible computing, or be all virtual. So the goal of this chapter is to try and not necessarily tell teachers what the right answer is, because that would be very fun, but instead to kind of lay out a set of resources and provide teachers with ways to help them make informed decisions. So the way that we went about doing that was first to kind of lay out a set of dimensions that are worth considering when trying to decide what environments to use. And so for each of these dimensions, we talk a little bit about where the ideas came from and why we think they're important. So the first dimension to consider is the idea of low floors, which again harkens back to Papert and early logo work, which is thinking about ways to make the programming, or how the programming environment is accessible to novices. What are the various on-ramps? How can it be intuitive and easy for those who are just getting started on their computing careers? So that's a first dimension. A second complementary dimension of low floors is high ceilings and expressive power. And so this is in considering what environments to use, thinking about kind of how far you might be able to go with it. Is it important for people to be able to do quote unquote kind of authentic professional style programming, or is it sufficient for learners to kind of be more focused on engagement and expressivity in terms of the things that they're interested and care about? So second dimension is high ceilings and expressive power. The third is the idea of wide walls and a diversity of artifacts. The tool that you choose, are you able to make a wide variety of different types of projects, or all the projects that you're going to make with it more or less going to look the same? And so thinking about, is this something that you think will be important for your learners, that they can kind of really insert themselves into the tools being made and create artifacts that really resonate with who they are and what they care about? Or is it more important to have some consistency across the classroom? A fourth dimension to consider are the social aspects of the environment. Are there characteristics of the environment or the larger ecosystem that it's situated within that will allow learners to share ideas with each other, to present the work that they're doing, to collaborate, to remix, to talk about, to present the project that they're making? And so thinking through, is that something that's important? And if so, what would that look like for the various tools that you're considering? A fifth dimension is not necessarily a characteristic of the environment itself, but instead thinking about curricula and supporting materials, again, thinking about the larger ecosystem that it's situated within. Some environments might be really cool and exciting, but have very little in the way of curricula that go along with it or supporting materials. You might be directed to a GitHub repository that you have to like compile and host on your own, versus other really mature environments that have textbooks and examples that go along with it, and assessments and et cetera. So another dimension to consider in terms of deciding what tools to use is kind of the supporting materials that go along with it. And then the last dimension that we discuss is this idea of preparation for future learning. And that's thinking about, in deciding what tool you're going to use for your learners, what trajectory might it put those learners on, and in what ways might it connect with future types of learning future learning opportunities that they'll have, be it in computer science or beyond. And so thinking about what that might be for the environments that you're using. So in our chapter, we go through all these dimensions and kind of talk about why we think they're important and what they look like. And then in the second half of the chapter, we walk through not necessarily specific environments, but kind of families of environments and what those different dimensions look like within those families. So we spend some time talking about block-based languages and what those various dimensions look like, and kind of where block-based languages excel versus where there might be some drawbacks. Then naturally spend some time talking about text-based languages, again, through the lens of the various dimensions that we articulate at the start of the chapter. Pre-littered and symbolic languages, this is the thing about the youngest learners. What are characteristics of environments for learners that don't have this built-in dependency on reading and literacy skills? And then finally, physical computing. And we think about physical computing very broadly, but what are the various affordances as it relates to those dimensions that we outlined? So ultimately, the goal of this chapter is to take teachers from this place where they're feeling kind of overwhelmed and unsure to a place where they're more excited about all the different tools that exist and kind of thinking about how they can bring in different ideas to their classroom to get their kids excited about the world of computing. So that's our chapter. Shuchi, since you're here, anything to add? Put you on the spot?
No, that's it. You did a great job, David. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, and very nice seeing everyone.
And I do want to add actually that at the end we do at the end of several chapters we add a list of resources to turn to for more further reading, and this is also one of those chapters that has a ton of references at the end that folks can refer to.